Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Citizen Representatives podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm here with my friend Adam. Adam, are you well tanned and rested from your long summer break?
I did. I got a little vitamin D. I try to minimize the fear porn that my daily fear porn intake on local news media, or for that matter, national news media. So I'm feeling rested and good, and a little out of practice for these sessions, but ready to go.
It's just like riding a bike, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
We're told to cut back to not participate in any porn at all, but they never talk about fear porn. Like
I know.
I well, I won't go there. It's just something that it's very addictive, and a lot of
Yeah,
people are empowered by it because now they have a voice, and it's very weird.
it's the clickbait phenomenon, right? And then news media, they love that because it gives them viewers, and it works off the same hormones that other addictive behaviors work off of. So anyway,
Well, I'm thinking about applying for a second job as a greeter for Walmart, but I want to be kind of a mask police. I need to be in that position. So anyway,
you want friends, huh?
I need friends, and that's a surefire way to get friends. So, uh, citizen representatives reduces corruption in politics by uniting as legal citizens to elect lawmakers with the iron-clad agreement that they will vote on bills according to a majority vote by citizens in their district or state. It's an interesting concept. We're working hard to. Not the last month. Took about a month off because of work considerations and things like that. But uh, you know, citizen representatives is a pretty cool idea in my opinion. I didn't come up with it. It came from a co-friend of ours. Is that the right word? A co-friend, a
Common
common
friend.
friend, a a friend that we have in common, named J.J. Dewey. Comes from a book called Fixing America: Molecular Politics. It might be in reverse: Molecular Politics, Fixing America, but it's a combination of those phrases. And again, it's the idea that we as citizens vote on bills and things with the intent of informing our representatives on how to vote. So we're keeping the constitutional structure. We're not doing term limits, but in effect, it can be a term limit. If that representative or senator votes against the will of the people, then he or she would be voted out and shamed. Shame. Does shame even work on politicians, though?
No, they are absolutely shameless. Didn't you see what happened in San Francisco this past week? Nancy Pe-
Um,
Nan-
oh,
Nancy Pelosi
go
with
ahead.
all of her Nancy Pelosi with all of the dignitaries and special people, and they were all having a nice dinner on some immaculate estate, some this royal thing. And I don't know if they were in San Francisco, but they were. I mean, that's her district. I assume they were there. But all of the people serving food, all of the servants were all masked up. So good enough for the,
Nobody else
but
was.
not for me. So it's another
Well, they
lesson
paid
in.
in all fairness, they did pay $10,000. So money actually keeps away the COVID. Money and
Oh,
power. Once you
okay.
have that, you don't have to worry about the COVID anymore. You can tell other people what to do and force your will upon others, but once you have that set up, and especially if you're a Democrat, then you can pretty much do whatever you want and get away with it. Now, hopefully, the governor of California will be recalled. There's a recall election coming up, and hopefully he'll be recalled. And you know, there's just so much going on there with basically them allowing crime to happen and not prosecuting crime. I think that's one of the big things, and then also kind of the COVID response. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with these the general kind of well, we're not going to prosecute crime. Is that your take, or is it? Am I seeing it a little bit differently?
Yeah, I don't know what the end game is there, but they certainly seem to like the chaos. And they can hire all the private security that they want, and it's kind of amazing because really in the end, the very people they claim to be representing and fighting for, they end up screwing because those people don't have police forces to enforce. They're the ones who really benefit from a strong police force. But when we defund the police, hey, well, we're rich. We can still fund our security forces. We're protected. But the little guy, the one that always gets crapped on, is still getting crapped on. And so I don't know how long that can last.
They always think they're doing a favor to the poor people. I say poor people like I'm,
Inner city,
I'm going to make it
yeah,
the inner. Yeah, it's just less fortunate people. I'm going to make it easier on you, and always. This is kind of a rule in economics and things like that. Is when you incentivize a particular behavior, you're going to get that behavior. If you don't prosecute shoplifting, well, guess what? Now all of the Walgreens in a 10-mile radius are going to close, and guess who's disproportionately affected there? Well, now people have to go further away to get their prescriptions and their goods, and then people are losing their jobs, and then now they have to go on unemployment. Well, now the federal government is paying higher unemployment, so now they're getting more than what they were paid at work, and so now I say nobody, but now a lot of people aren't going back to work because they're on unemployment. And now because everyone's on unemployment, the businesses can't function properly. And now because the businesses can't function properly, now I can't get my Cheetos in time. Now there's a run on chicken or whatever. Now we're having a hard time getting goods. And I don't say that the Cheetos thing to trivialize it, but there's so many things that go into a functioning economy, and once you kind of pull a brick out here or there, it doesn't seem like very much, but it can really topple the whole thing and affect things for a long time across the whole world. It's not just little things. So it's pretty much all California's fault.
Well done.
No, not California. So name something that was botched worse than Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal.
Oh man,
Like Coke Zero.
That was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. Not
Coke
as
Zero.
not pretty trivial, and not nearly as consequential. We're talking about lives versus people's addictive behavior, but yeah.
Bill Buckner letting the ball roll through his legs in the World Series,
Oh,
depriving
come on,
Bruce Smith of an MVP. Or Bruce Hurst, I mean.
Bruce Hurst, yeah. I'm a
Bruce
Red
Hurst,
Sox
sorry.
fan. Come on, you can't do that to me. Yeah, no, this has been quite the catastrophe. Biden, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know who's in charge. It's a mystery. It's baffling to me. I don't get it. I don't know how you can screw up that badly. Or I mean, it almost seems intentional.
You have to start looking at it as something intentional, don't you? I mean, obviously it's intentional because that's what they're doing. But did they think that it was going to go well, I guess is the thing. It's like they've said, and I'm paraphrasing pretty closely to what they've said, but we've taken all contingencies. We've looked at it all of these angles, and this is the best outcome. And
Yeah. I don't know
really,
how
this
you
is the
can't.
best outcome.
Yeah, is it so hard to prep and prepare and start extracting people well in advance? I mean, we've known these dates were coming for a long time, so it's not like it's been a mystery. You should have been able to extract, American civilians and personnel, military personnel, much sooner. But I don't. There's no explanation for it.
Well, part of the problem is the intelligence, and at least from what I've read, have said, "Oh, we didn't expect it to fall this quickly." they were expecting months or possibly even years for this to happen, and it happened in a matter of days or weeks. It was just a
Yeah.
complete collapse. And so maybe, people were,
I I don't even know that the intelligence was that bad. I mean, I had heard that they were warning against this, but who knows?
I don't know, it's all backwards. So it seemed to me, now please correct me if I'm wrong, viewer or listener, that they obviously, this was, the withdrawal from Afghanistan was not Biden's idea by any stretch of the imagination. Trump, this has been talked about for a long time. From the moment we went in, well, what's our exit strategy? So it's not like we haven't ever thought about leaving Afghanistan. So they've always had
Right.
kind of a plan. Well, how are we going to do it? When and what's the situation going to be like when we leave? So Trump, he announced a withdrawal from Afghanistan, and he made some series of negotiations with the Taliban to let it happen. Now, I don't know exactly why he was negotiating with the Taliban. They have obviously a presence there, and hold off on the fighting until we can do this. Well, Biden is, he keeps saying this is Trump's plan. This is Trump's idea. We're effecting it. But isn't that kind of, I mean, that's not completely correct. We can both have a plan, but isn't the devil in the details? Like, what you can't, like, we both have a plan, liberals and conservatives, we both have a plan to help the poor, but they're completely different ways to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What's the difference here, and what went wrong?
Well, I mean, the priority has to be American lives, right? And that doesn't seem to have been the priority, is to get American lives out first thing and make sure that they're safe and make sure that there's an exit plan before that last airplane leaves. The other part is, okay, yeah, there are Afghans who have helped us or seem to have helped us. Let's start early. Let's really start vetting them, because you can't trust everyone. I mean, people do things for self-interested purposes. So just because somebody's been helping American intelligence or, interpreting, doesn't mean that their allegiance lies with the Americans, right? They may have been doing that out of convenience. They may have been doing that because they are working as, it's an espionage effort, whatever. Or they just look at it and they go, well, you're going to abandon us now. You know, screw you. I'll go back to I got to go back to my allegiance. I think that's what's happened, basically, because they do feel abandoned. So
Well,
we
they
haven't.
kind of see a vacuum of power, and they want to at least be with
Yeah,
the winner.
yeah, exactly. And so I mean, yeah, no, Americans, get them out number one, right? And I don't understand how you can screw up that much. How you can still have thousands of lives behind enemy lines that you haven't prepared for. That should be a very easy thing to look at and try and make a priority. And then the second is, okay, yeah, there are some people who probably deserve to be extracted, some Afghanis who have helped us. Let's vet them, let's vet their families, but instead the priority seems kind of backwards. It seems like we're more focused on getting just willy-nilly anybody out, and now the deadline is the 31st, and they're holding fast to that. Well, what's going to happen to American lives that are still behind enemy lines? I don't see how they're going to be able to extract everybody.
It just seems that they just kind of the actions assumed that the government of Afghanistan was going to remain in power for a while. Like, why would so
Yeah,
many American citizens stay there if they didn't feel at least safe? Like, I'd be on the next, Toyota Hilux truck out of there to the nearest friendly border, if
yeah,
there is such a thing. Um,
yeah.
I don't know, and then it just seemed like there was very little preparation to get these, like you're talking about, the Americans out, the translators, the people who helped us. But I can assure you that the contractors who were involved in this, they got out. So
Yeah, yeah. So their money's safe, but it's astounding that. So my wife's telling me that they're like Glenn Beck and the Underground Railroad guy, Tim, what's his name?
Tim
Anyway,
something.
they have organized, and they've done a GoFundMe, and they're trying to fund, and they've sent planes over there, trying to get as many people out as they can. And it's kind of like that grassroots thing. We saw this with when, businesses were shut down, and we saw grassroots efforts from Americans. The government wasn't doing anything to help them. They were hindering their ability to make a living. And so you saw these grassroots efforts from good-hearted Americans, donating money, trying to help keep these businesses alive, get them through a tough period. And so again, we see that it's like, why do we have to bail out the American government? We've got no end of funds to do this. We show consistently that we're willing to spend any quantity of money to do all kinds of programs and initiatives, but somehow getting American lives out of a foreign country, a hostile foreign country, is not a priority. It's
No, and
amazing.
then we're gonna charge each person $2,000 to get out of there for their plane ticket. I think they've rescinded that, but that wasn't very good
Yeah,
optics.
yeah, no.
None of this
I
has been
mean,
good optics, and I read reports that the Biden aides were afraid to tell him that he really screwed up. First of all, because he wouldn't remember, so they'd have to tell him again, and then
yeah,
and then for the fallout there. Um, and if he won't take any questions, it's a big this is the biggest issue of the day, and he won't take questions. He changes the subject and he says, "Oh, this is the best that we could do." Well,
yeah, and yeah,
this is the best we
another
could do.
press. I was going to say there was
Go ahead.
another press conference today, and he didn't take any questions. And Jen Psaki, is that how you say her name? The press
Yeah.
secretary, she spoke before so that she wouldn't have to clean up after his speech. And his speech was some rambling, hey, we just passed this $4 trillion bill in the House, and
Infrastructure.
yeah, and global, climate change initiatives, and all kinds of things, except any emotional connection over the Afghanistan issue. It's like it's
Well,
amazing.
the way to handle this is to not have any planes with landing gear, because the Afghanis then they can't get a hold of the landing gear and fall off for those bad photo ops when they're falling from hundreds of feet from the sky to their deaths, trying to flee because the United States is leaving them, and
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, we need the
got to
vertical
have the photo
takeoff
ops.
jets. We need the vertical takeoff jets like the old British Harrier, just takes off vertically and there's nothing to cling to. But I guess
What they
there's
should have
landing gear.
done,
There's landing gear for a minute, but anyway.
well, they should have done high-speed rail. That would have been a perfect Democrat thing. Like let's get a high-speed rail from here to, I don't know, Egypt or somewhere, wherever. I
Just
don't
right
know.
across,
This
yeah, just right across the Red Sea, and then through the Straits of whatever, and
Well,
through
they
the
don't have.
Atlantic,
Yeah, they can
and
go
get them
underneath.
back
They
to
can do the
Washington D.C.
tunneling.
That's
They
right.
can use the
Yeah.
boring company from Elon Musk and just tunnel right underneath. It's rail, high-speed rail. Let's get people
It's
out. We
cheap.
don't need the photo op. It's a win-win.
What would that cost? I'm guessing 8 trillion, maybe.
Well,
Seriously,
there's less red tape in Afghanistan. There aren't as many homes that you'd have to take in eminent domain,
labor's
and
cheap.
labor's cheap. You've got slave labor next door in Syria, thanks to Hillary Clinton. So it's again win-win. Let's use the resources in the area. Does this quick exit have a benefit? Have you looked at it from this angle, that even though there's really bad optics right now, perhaps we're avoiding a much longer kind of civil war
Well, I mean, we're getting
or
out, which I think
skirmish?
is yeah, we're getting out, which is what everybody, I mean, it's almost like, I, I don't know how many American lives are still there. Do you know the count? I was hearing anywhere from 3 to 10,000.
Non-military.
Yeah. Well,
Non-military,
yeah,
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 it's
non-military.
approximately, yeah, it's in that range. From an article that I read today, yeah, approximately that many.
3,000, 5,000, something like that,
3 to 10, I think.
or more. It's a broad range. Um, where's the Census Bureau? Um, so yeah, it's an astounding move. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll just. I mean, for one thing, I Biden couldn't seem to care less about what people think at this point. I mean, the media kind of hesitantly has gone after him on this particular issue, the mainstream media, but he's sacrificial. So maybe somebody just said, screw it, let's just get out. Um, at least then we're out. And yeah, we are out. Of course, then you've got this vacuum and you've got all these other issues. So it's a terrible situation all around. I don't know that there's a winnable, but at least if you're going to get out and you're going to say, okay, yeah, there probably will be a vacuum there. We may have to deal with this down the road. At least with Trump, I mean, he was telling the head of the Taliban, hey, look, if you do anything in our absence, we're going to come back and kick your butt hard. I don't think they feel that threat anymore with Biden in there. So that's problem one. Problem two is that yeah, you just keep staying there forever and ever, and how do you get out? But at least you at the very least you get the American lives out. I don't know how they screwed that up so badly.
Yeah, I don't think I just don't see the benefit. I mean, I do see a benefit of a quick withdrawal, but you could still do a quick withdrawal and get the Americans out, not turn over billions of dollars worth of helicopters and guns and missiles and tech to the Taliban, and then you don't leave them.
Yeah,
If you're really going to leave, and you know that the government is not going to last, you destroy everything that is yours, and perhaps maybe that
yeah,
let's not leave anything for them to use that can come back against us. That can still be a
yeah,
short timeline. That doesn't have to
yeah. We
be
got
a year or 2 years. You could do that in a couple months.
Well, and we've got these things called drones that can see through walls. I mean, what's keeping us from doing exactly that? All these vehicles, all of this expensive aircraft, this money. Why aren't we just droning the heck? I mean, I realize they move quickly, but I mean, you think we could have been prepared for something like that, but
I don't know. Anyway, we agree. I think most people agree that it was time to get out of Afghanistan. It's just the manner in which and the order of
yeah,
operations in which it was done that is not good. And hopefully
definitely.
there aren't many long-term consequences from the way that it was done. I mean, of course, people died, so there's long-term consequences for those families. But on a nation level, I'm hoping that there's not. Some very sad pictures and things coming out. Mothers trying to get their babies out, and people again falling from being crushed from clinging onto the landing gear of the airplanes. Just kind of a sad deal all around. Let's switch gears to other sad topics. The Pfizer vaccine has received the FDA approval. This was yesterday, I believe. So now President Biden is. Dang it! I said that. I said President Biden. Joe Biden has said now he's given the green light to companies. I don't like. I know he's the president, but it just hurts my feelings to say that. President Biden. Um, the the FDA has granted the accelerated approval of the Pfizer vaccine. The FDA has yesterday, and so now Mr. Biden has kind of signaled to companies, now we'd like you to mandate the vaccine for everyone, so that they can't work for you or do anything unless they have the vaccine. So there were several timelines that, I mean, it was projected to take till 2024 to 2025 to get the final approval for this vaccine. And the reason that they do that is because it's very difficult in such a short period of time to see the long-term, if there's any long-term effects from the vaccine. Of course, I mean, that's self-evident, isn't it? So, but there's too much political power to be gained by granting it now. There's too much money to be made. There's too much this or that. There's too much at stake to not let it be approved, in my opinion, prematurely. So there are a number of trials that they kind of waived. They probably still want the results of these things, but they're not requiring before the approval because it's already been approved yesterday. And some of these include the studies on myocarditis, pericarditis, infant outcomes during pregnancy, a number of these different types of studies that they would normally do with a vaccine. Those have been put on the back burner. Like I say, they still probably want those, but who knows if those will ever be publicized or even put forward. So did this incentivize you, Adam, to, and maybe you don't want to talk about your vaccination status, and if you don't, I respect you because I'm not a psychopath. Like if you don't want to talk about it, just let me know. I'm not gonna like get upset about it. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I haven't been vaccinated. I don't intend to get vaccinated. This doesn't encourage me to get vaccinated. In fact, it probably discourages me from being vaccinated because, we've decided, I guess, at the top level that it's more important to be able to say this is a non-emergency vaccine now than to decide over time whether it has effects on things like fertility, whether you have a chance to compare that to a control group that hasn't been vaccinated and what the actual effects are on contagion and hospitalization, potential hospitalization. Not to mention the fact that this virus is pretty much 99% recoverable for the vast majority of those infected. So, yeah, a lot of it's interesting to see them bypass that. Um, not surprised, not surprised at all. I think they have decided on a course. They've decided on the way the narrative and the outcome that they want. And they want as many people vaccinated as possible. And you can speculate yourself as a viewer what those motivations might be. I think it's always helpful to follow the money. But yeah, it's not surprising, but it certainly doesn't change my mind about whether or not I
So
feel like I need to be vaccinated.
now, again, if you don't want to talk about this, you were mentioning that you went on a trip to South Africa. I think you said South Africa, and you
Yeah.
received a bunch of vaccinations for that. So it's not like you're not I wouldn't call you an
And
anti-vaxxer.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I've had one flu shot in my life, right? And that was the year I got the flu. I've been pretty healthy most other years. I never saw the reason for it. But again, it's not a real vaccine anyway. They admit it's a shot. Um, but I've always been kind of skeptical of the need for all of these vaccines and the repeat boosters and things like that. But yeah, I went to South Africa. You're required to get the yellow fever. I think it's the yellow fever vaccine when you go to South Africa because you're going into a high risk area. Um, so I went down to the county medical place, and the person there, the nurse there in charge said, "So when was the last time you got MMR and all these other different vaccines that you're used that everybody gets when they're a child, and then again probably when they're 18 to 20 years old?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And it's like, well, now they recommend that you get another dose, you get a third dose when you're in your, I don't know, 40s, 50s, whatever. So I kind of hesitated, but then I was like, okay, whatever, fine. And, I'm really upset that I went through with that. I got a cocktail of about five different vaccines on top of the um, yellow fever vaccine. And who knows what else she threw in there. Um, I mean, she wanted to give me hepatitis B, which is for sexually transmitted diseases, the hep B vaccine. I was like, no, it's okay. I don't plan on having sex while I'm in South Africa. But I mean, they just try and push vaccines. Some people in the medical industry, and I succumbed to that, and I regret it. I mean, I started having, I've had some medical issues since that time. Started right about that time. I can't link it directly, but it's interesting to consider. And that I don't know if that made me hesitant of this vaccine. I think the bottom line is that I just look at COVID as not being that. Um, Much of a risk to me. I look at risk reward and I go, okay, this is an experimental vaccine. As far as I'm concerned, even the Pfizer vaccine is still experimental because it's just been brought online so recently. I don't care what the FDA says. And so I just look at my risk factors and I just go, hey, yeah, I don't see a need to have this vaccine. I don't understand the one size fits all.
Yeah, in a minute we're going to talk about kind of some of the things that everyone agrees on, and maybe we can, project some of the things out from there. So this is the question I have: what counts as fully vaccinated? That's it seems to be at least that should be a pretty cut and dry thing, don't you think? Like, what counts as fully vaccinated?
As far as the COVID vaccinations,
Yeah. Hmm.
well, I mean, yeah, as I understand it, if you've only had one shot, you are not fully vaccinated. And so they will count you as an unvaccinated person if you happen to get COVID for any reason, or if you
So
happen
there
to go to
were
the hospital.
Well, there are different shots. So there was one shot, I don't remember which one it is because I haven't been
Johnson,
shopping for the shots.
Johnson and Johnson is the single shot.
Okay, so yeah, that was my point that there were marketed um, and publicized different shots. One was a single shot. Johnson and Johnson apparently and the Moderna was a two shot along with the Pfizer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I,
there are different shots, and so my kind of the point that I'm getting at is, well, what counts as fully vaccinated? Is it the one shot or is it the two? And now, as we're seeing with the efficacy kind of trial, not necessarily trial, but studies, that the efficacy of these vaccines falls off, and so now they're pushing boosters, and
yeah.
so a lot of people went into this into get a vaccination with the understanding that they'd only have to do it once or twice and then be done with it. And then now we
Yeah.
can move on with our lives. Well, now that's not the case. They're shifting the goalposts to say, well, now you're actually, just because you have the two, you're going to need a booster in 8 months. And then after that, you'll probably need another one and it just keeps going and going. And so that's one of the reasons that I have a somewhat of a hesitation for it is because they can't be sure, and you can't be sure of anything, but um, they they keep moving the goalposts. It's an always moving target that you can't hit, and they just seem to want to exploit it for gain and for power. And so that's one of the reasons that I am hesitant to take that particular vaccine.
Did Did you see the clip from Murkowski, the head of the CDC, the other day about she spoke to what's going on in Israel and the high rate of infection among vaccinated that they're seeing.
I didn't see the
She
clip,
actually,
but I may have read the headline. Go ahead and tell me.
yeah, I mean, she basically said, I mean, yeah, we're seeing a high incidence of infection among vaccinated that's increasing because Israel is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, right? It's like 95% or something. And they're seeing a high rate of infection among vaccinated people, which calls into question the efficacy of the vaccine. Um, but she admitted we're watching this very closely, which was quite an amazing admission that she would say that public, at least on this particular medical forum that they were doing. So yeah, I think there's all kinds of reasons that anybody can question, and what is so wrong about questioning? And we live in this society that is so penalizing and just fall in line. Don't question. You have to, the vaccine works. Vaccines work. This is science. Well, no, it's not as clear cut as that. There are many good questions to ask about the vaccine and about the science, and so I think people are in their right to do so, and we shouldn't be, we shouldn't denigrate people that choose to get the vaccine, and we shouldn't denigrate people that choose not to get the vaccine. We should, live and let live.
So there are some things that we can kind of agree on. I know you and I would agree on them most likely, but across the political spectrum, there are some trends and patterns that we can generally say that everyone believes, or at least can agree with. Some of those would be that COVID mostly kills these older and people with who already have comorbidities or already have underlying health issues.
Right.
So the general cutoff is about 60 to 65. Now there may be a range. I don't remember. I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but we can generally agree that the older people are affected more.
Yeah.
Would you disagree with my assumption there, with everyone being in agreement, or are there people who disagree with that?
No, I think that is generally accepted. I think there are people who are anxious to take any little tidbit of evidence that, oh, a child was hospitalized, and you know, and they want to run with that and inflate it. But so there are people who are always seeking their own interest to make this worse than it is. Just pick out the anomalies, the anecdotes, the stories of of people younger. But
Yeah.
but I think generally any honest person has to admit that yes, mostly people 70 and older, or people with very, mostly obese, frankly. Obesity seems to be a
People
huge
with
factor.
obesity, people with diabetes, you
Diabetes,
know,
immune
things
compromised
like that.
systems, things like that. Yeah.
So then also the kind of going hand in hand with that is that kids, um, and most people for that matter, under the age of 40, they typically, they're not affected that much. They may get sick and they may have to stay home from school or work, but it's really not that big of a deal for the majority of those people. So I think most people agree that is true. We're also finding patterns that against what we were told with the vaccination. I saw a clip where Dr. Fauci said something like, "With 100% efficacy, this vaccine will prevent COVID." Well, now we're finding that that's not true. We're finding that you can pass COVID even if you have been vaccinated, and of course if you haven't. And so, are there people who don't believe that right now, or because that seems to be a generally recognized point that people have come to recognize that now we understand that people who are vaccinated can pass it and contract it, can
I,
contract
you
and
know,
pass the disease.
yeah, I think there's probably a reluctance for some people to accept that, or they're just not that informed about it, right? That's not going to be something that's made in a point of in mainstream news media outlets. Now, you might hear about it on a left-wing talk show like Bill Maher. He's been kind of honest about this lately and said some pretty strong things. I mean, he was kind of ticked off that they're suggesting that you need a booster now, and he's admitting, I don't know that I want a booster. I was sold that this was done after 2 doses, and now they're telling me I need a booster. Well, what good is it? So I think on the point you're asking, I don't know that people are as informed on that particular issue.
No, that's a excellent point, because some people only watch CNN, or they only watch MSNBC, or kind of the programs who don't always talk about
Local
all the
news.
angles of this. Yeah,
Local
even
news might local news. I can't think of a local news outlet in the country that is doesn't just repeat what CNN and Reuters and um, MSNBC, what all these outlets peddle.
well,
There
that's
might be
true.
one.
I'm assuming it's true. I don't remember the last time that I actually watched local news, but that's another subject.
Yeah.
So my point is that I'm trying to provide a rationale for which a lot of people are rejecting the vaccination. And I say vaccination in quotation marks because it's really not a vaccination. I mean,
Right. It's a
it's
gene
it's
therapy.
a gene therapy, basically. Oh, we're not editing your DNA. No, but you're programming your body to create something that you wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, anyway.
Well, and it doesn't I think it's important to point out, Tyler, all it does is go after the spike protein, one spike protein, right? It doesn't do what natural immunity does, which is go after, it creates antibodies and it creates T cell immunity in addition to gaining advantage over the spike protein. So
Well, that's all we think
natural,
that it does.
yeah, natural immunity, yeah, right. The natural immunity clearly it should be given far more consideration in this, right? We don't even consider that when we're vaccinating people. I mean, why people with high antibody loads should should, you know should potentially not be considered for the vaccine, for the supposed vaccine.
Well, and of course, once you create a vaccine, then there's a possibility of it creating the mutants and
Right.
the variants. And I'm not talking about like mutant people. I'm talking about the virus is mutating and creating a different form. Typically, it
Yeah.
gets less fatal. The mortality rates of the subsequent viruses typically falls off, but
Yeah.
uh, it can cause a bunch of other problems. They're raising red flags now, saying that the vaccinated people could be creating a bigger problem because of um, I don't remember, but they're saying that it could be creating a bigger problem. That's something that we'll research and bring back. But a question
Yeah.
that so so older people are at risk. I wouldn't begrudge people if they're older, they're in their 80s or older, and they they're not doing well, and a flu could take them out. Well, I don't begrudge people from doing that, because and we are generally seeing, this is another one of those things that we can generalize. Those that get the vaccination tend to have lessened symptoms. The symptoms are reduced. Is that something that is generally accepted, or is that not
Though, well,
is that
that's
not the
certainly the
case? Is that
narrative.
something that
That's
it's
certainly
a
the
narrative, but
narrative.
not
But
necessarily true?
well, I don't know. I mean, you have to take their word for it. I mean, these are a lot of you get hospital physicians, people on the front lines, and there are some, I get it. They're exhausted. They've been there, they've done battle, and they see kind of, they don't understand why people won't get vaccinated. They're tired of seeing people die. I get why they they push that, and they claim the symptoms are, but they're always seeing the most extreme cases, right? So we kind of have to take their word for it that vaccinated people are getting lesser symptoms. I mean, I've heard of, I have a friend group, and we go back and forth and text about this stuff all the time, and it's quite polarized at times, our views on this. And I had a buddy that's told us an anecdote about a friend that we all know in common who was 40 years old, and he said he's an anti-vaxxer, and he got COVID and was in the hospital and nearly died. And his brother's a brain surgeon, by the way. And I said, really? Well, that's terrible. Well, I come to find out, I run into this guy's sister at the supermarket the other day. I said, oh, so how's so and so doing? I heard, I can't believe that he had COVID and was in the hospital. And she said, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he almost died. Oh, and he was vaccinated.
Oh,
So I had one buddy trying to sell me that he was anti-vax. He didn't say he was unvaccinated. He just said he was anti-vax. But apparently he had the vaccination and he was
so he didn't
pretty
technically.
deathly.
He may not have technically lied to you, but it was.
Technically, yeah, yeah. So needless to say, I corrected the record pretty quickly, but and I'm not looking to do that, but I'm just like I'm shocked that people genuinely want to push the narrative that they want to believe, and I know I do that. I look for the evidence that's convenient, but hopefully, I mean, what I've seen through all of this mostly that is that generally people that can accept a consensus view, the vaccines of, COVID's off, is the worst thing that we've ever confronted. The vaccine's effective. People that just, they're not reading additional things. And I hope that I'm trying to read additional things and give weight to different factors and acknowledge, yes, it's a bad thing and there are things happening, but there are these other considerations, and I sometimes I feel like, God, I have to do all the blanking work to keep up on this, and you guys are just taking the lazy orthodoxy view, the orthodox view of things, But are you researching what you're being told? No, they're not. They're just not questioning it. They're just taking the authorities' views, absorbing it, and saying, well, the authorities said, and I'm saying, well, yeah, there's some other evidence.
Are you doing the
Tired
same
of doing
research
that.
that I'm doing? The research that
Yeah,
I
I'm
do
sure
is I follow the grandmas on Facebook is actually what I
the
do, and they
grandmas.
have the grandmas on Facebook. They have the best information, and it's in meme format typically, so it's quick. I get the information; it's to the point. So
Yeah.
we're doing the same research, right?
Well, I have a spouse that's she's pretty fired up about this whole topic, and the whole school thing. That's an issue, and so she reads a lot, and I caution her. I say, okay, well, what's the source on this? What's where did you get this? Um, how do you know that it's true? And so yeah, we're trying, but there's a lot of information out there. So, but I don't understand just trusting an authority. That makes no sense to me. It's like research it yourself. Where did the
Well,
authority get their information?
there's a kind of a narrative in the area right now that the vaccine is the only way to stop the pandemic,
Yeah,
and I don't think that that's true. I think that there are plenty of ways. I mean, how about hand washing? I mean, literally, let's wash our hands. How about if you get sick, stay home from work? I know that is
yeah,
social distancing in a way.
yeah.
Um, how about getting out in the sun? How about a little bit of vitamin D? How about
Vitamin D, I
getting
think, is
some
huge.
exercise?
Yeah,
It's one of the
not
most
not
underrated.
eating not
Go
eating
ahead.
processed foods. Not eating processed foods. Let's throw that in there. And sugars.
Not being overweight, not having sugar issues. I mean, there are some home run issues. There are some home run things that could be done far before and long before a vaccine needs to come into play.
Yeah.
Um, so let's just put that out there. We're not doctors. So do your own. It's so stupid that we can't. I'm not a doctor, but exercise.
Uh,
I don't know.
Seems common sense. I mean, I
I
think a
don't
good
know.
doc any good I think any good doctor would suggest getting some sunlight, some exercise, and eating right.
If you asked them, they don't ever talk to you about health things. Oh,
And
what
get
should
your
I do for good
vaccine
health?
shot.
What should I do for good health, doctor? Uh, I don't know
Take this drug.
what hurts on you. Let me get out my prescription pad. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
we're
I'm
generalizing.
stereotyping.
Not all doctors are like that,
Not
but
all doctors. Not all. Not all. Not all. Not all. Um, so predictions. Martial law. So I wanted
oh
to do some
man,
predictions. So
do you,
are we going to have to go to Australia with some troops to free them, or are they screwed? Or I mean, they have like a handful of cases, literally a handful, and they shut down the whole
yeah,
country under basically martial law.
yeah, yeah. It's sad. I mean, I don't know how they get themselves out of this. They are protesting, but they're getting pelted with plastic bullets and pepper spray and gassed, and I don't know. I mean, I would be in the streets at that point. I'd be with those protesters. I think this is beyond. There's it takes a lot to get me um, to go to that length, but I would be, and that's all they're doing is protesting, right? But it's the police that are, you know, shutting them down. It's not like they're fighting back. They're fighting back for their lives. Did you see did you know Andrew Bogut, the player for
Yeah,
Utah? Did you see his post?
I did see that.
It,
He did a video, and he said he was asked, or he was offered to be paid to promote the lockdowns, and
yeah,
he said no.
yeah, yeah. He's fighting for the little man. He made a very very good argument for why he's speaking out. He's got nothing to lose, and well, he's got everything to lose, but nothing to gain. But
Yeah.
fortunately, he doesn't. He's got money, so he's
So
okay.
one of the photographs that came out of there where it was a line of police, and one of them had a medic sign on his back, and he had a big baton just ready to come down on somebody. So I mean, it was pretty funny. Okay, so we have Australia. You have the medic with his baton coming down. You know, I'm here to save you from from
From
your health,
COVID.
but from COVID, and I'm going to bash your head in.
Give you a concussion. Let's concuss you.
And there was one person who was sentenced to 8 months in jail because he organized a protest. And of course, they gave up their guns, and so now they have martial law. Yeah, I don't know if it's by name martial law because I don't know where that term comes from. I don't know if it's a generalized term, but the idea of a police state coming in is
Yeah,
generally what I'm talking about.
pretty
So
heavy-handed.
heavy-handed over, I mean, this is the if I can just save the one life type reasoning. We need to
Yeah,
just, you know, we can't let anyone die from this. And that's a very dangerous line of thinking because you can justify pretty much anything when you
yeah.
have that line of thinking. Predictions. Joe Biden takes a nap. When he wakes up, he accidentally resigns. So I that's not far fetched. I mean, you know,
I
I
think
bet somebody already has the papers drawn up. I'm serious. I bet literally there are already papers drawn up for this.
I think he'd be glad to be out of there, but because he's gonna get he's gonna get the protection from the Secret Service for the rest of his life. He's gonna get he's got the pension. He's got the deals with the Chinese. Hunter's gonna take care of him. So he's set, right? He doesn't need the headache of standing up there and pretending to be not an invalid for the rest of
Well,
his
and
term.
then if he turns it over to the vice president, then he'll be the super gentleman for all the liberals. Oh, look, he gave up his position of power to the
Yeah.
woman, and that would
I
that would go for decades. That kind of narrative would literally sell for decades.
well, and but I think a lot of Democrats they're looking at the performance of the VP over the last 8 months,
And
and
they're
they're
like,
going,
"Whoa,
no, no, Joe's got to stay. He's got to stick this one out. We got this. This is not going to work. The alternative is not any better. So I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, interesting thought experiment. And then who would turn in Anne Frank nowadays? So Anne Frank, of course, the Diaries of Anne Frank. Um, there are a lot of parallels between kind of the thought police and people turning on each other and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And whenever it's pointed out, you go, "Oh, that's absurd. You can't do any sort of comparisons to the Holocaust." Well, okay, I hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, but you have to at least make it's not that far-fetched.
Well, Andrew Bogut, the basketball player in Australia, he was pointing out that there was a guy that was caught on cameras on an elevator by himself. So he'd left his apartment, was on an elevator, and he sneezed. He was alone on the elevator, but sneezed, didn't cover up. That guy is now on the run. I laugh about this. It's not. It would be comical if it weren't just totally stupid and asinine. But the guy is on the run from the police now. I don't know how he figured out that he needed to be on the run, but
Oh my gosh.
are you kidding? We're tracking down people who are sneezing alone on elevators. This is just insane.
Well,
So yeah, when does that come here? In some form. Oh, Adam's not vaccinated. Let's force him to get vaccinated. At gunpoint.
well,
Oh, that'll
you look
never
at
happen.
you look at things in history and you're like, oh, that can never happen again. You talk about the Salem
Hmm.
witch trials. Oh, we would never. Oh, we're too enlightened for the Salem witch trials. No, no, we're not. People get caught up in things, and I've seen people screeching like witches on over things. I know that's not the right analogy there because it was the people turning in the witches, but um, it was the idea that the things like that, the Salem witch trials, or Anne Frank can't happen again. That's just total garbage. That
Oh,
totally can't happen again.
the schools and mask mandates, right? That whole thing that's going on. It's just insane. You get on Next Door Neighbor, which is this. You think about the title of that little messaging group, Next Door Neighbor, and they have these throughout the country, right? In your area, you can get on and you can communicate with your neighbors about issues that are concerning. We got crime here, but whatever. Well, now it's just the shaming universe, right? And people are just violent on there. If you have just a kind of a reasonable point of view, you just don't even want to post because these people are just so religiously just maniacal about how they go about just bludgeoning people for you just want to kill people. You just don't care. You put a mask on your child. It's insane. I don't understand how we can be so emotional about these issues instead of just debating them, but it's the world we live
Well, I have a different next door neighbor group than you do, so we're talking about cats and
in.
dogs and things like normal stuff.
It's probably more reasonable. Yeah, here in Salt Lake, it's a little crazy.
I have to go on Facebook for the crazy stuff, and then I get outside of my normal little bubble. Anyway, a lot to talk about. It's we talk a lot about citizen representatives and the idea of citizen representatives and voting. But I think one of the biggest things we can do as people, because we only have the opportunity to vote every year or two, um, for local elections, for representatives, for presidents. There seem to be elections all the time, but it's not every day. So we don't have those types of opportunities to vote every day. But we do have the opportunity to vote with our dollars every day. And I think very quickly, these states that implement these vaccine mandates and the vaccine passports, they're going to chip away at it for a while. But at least, hopefully, at the beginning, they'll find that it's not an optimal way to go, because the businesses they'll lose so much money that they'll lobby the government to open it back up. I'm hoping it goes that way. I'm hoping that it doesn't turn to violence. I'm hoping that people aren't ostracized any more than they already are. I'm hoping that people can be nice to one another, that people can respect other people's choices, that if you are scared to go outside and be infected, then don't go outside. But people have a right to go and live and shop and do things. That's their right. You imposing your desires onto them is not correct. It's a false belief, it's a false premise, it's a false idol in a way. Any last thoughts from you, Adam?
I had this thought the other day as I was lying on the beach. So, how can you have true health? How can you have real health without freedom?
Are you asking me, or is this a rhetorical question, or are you just kind of...
A little bit of both, if you have any comment. But I thought about that. It really resonates with me personally that it seems to me that a truly healthy society, from the collective group to the individual, cannot enjoy true health, mental, physical, emotional, psychological, without an atmosphere of freedom. And the more we try and lock down those freedoms, the more unhealthy we become as a society. And that manifests physically. And I think that's what's happened with COVID to a large degree.
Well, that's a fantastic point, because once you start studying kind of health and things like that, so much of what presents itself physically is an emotional blockage or an emotional problem. And once you have that freedom, because if you have no freedom, you are stifled emotionally. At least most people are. Some people really like some people really like it that way.
I guess.
Some people just are loath to, they do not like to make decisions. Some people will do anything so that they don't have to be the one to take responsibility. But to your point, without freedom, how do you have true health? It starts with emotional health. It presents itself physically. It's a good thing to ponder on. So let's leave it at that. Thank you, Adam. Again, this has been Citizen Representatives. We've enjoyed having you listen to us. We will do our best to do a more of a weekly podcast and drop again due to some job conflicts and things. And Adam lounging on the beach in Mexico, we haven't been able to do a podcast as often. Again, Citizen Representatives is the idea that we get together as citizens to elect lawmakers with the understanding that they will vote on bills according to the desire of the people. Again, you can vote with your dollars, vote with your clicks by clicking the like button, the subscribe button. Please tell your friends of the idea. Let's get this idea spread. We can be found on YouTube, Facebook, all the podcast places. Check us out. Again, we really appreciate you sticking with us tonight and today, and we will catch you next time.